Okay, and today I am here as part of the Flute View doing a three-part video conference called Who is Afraid of the Kingma System Flute? Now, this is the third installment of the series. We have currently had Robert Dick as our first guest, Carla Rees as our second guest, and today we have Eva Kingma herself on the line with us. So I would just like to talk about how many people have these misconceptions about the Kingma System flute and what it does, and they look at the key work and they kind of aren't sure how to respond to it, and they freak out, and they really shouldn't, because it's an excellent tool. So Miss Eva Kingma would like to talk to us today about, how she got involved in flute making and different directions and the many people she's encountered. So Eva, tell us a little bit about how you chose, I guess, the flute and then flute making.
Oh, my parents, I have to go back into my childhood. My father was a sculptor. He made big bronze sculptures, and my mother was a piano player and a singer.
Oh.
So there was always music in the house, but there was also a workshop in the house with tools and things. So I'm raised with classical music, and my father was always making things. So somewhere in between is what's happening here, I think. I always had something special with flute. For some reason, when I look back to it, maybe it was unusual, I don't know. I saved up my pocket money and bought recordings from flutes, classical flute concertos from Rampal and whatever. And so for me, the flute has always been in my blood and in my heart. My uncle was a flute maker. He was a second flute player in the Concertgebouw Orchestra for 23 years.
Oh, wow.
And my father and mother were like good friends with my uncle. So there were many times when I was really small that we visited my uncle. And he was a hard person. He was always in a bad mood. I was a little afraid for him. But I always found it fascinating what he was doing in this shop. I never had the courage to ask him if I could take a look. Until I was 12, my father came home with, he changed one of his sculptures into a flute at my uncle. And he came home with this instrument. I started to play. I played a lot with my mother. But over the time, I became more fascinated about the technical part. And I started to take my flute apart. I was 16, 17 years old. I think it didn't always work out well, I have to admit. I think I partly killed it. Did something really stupid. And I called my uncle if he was interested in doing a repair. And he was in a bad mood. He said, no, why don't you come over and do it yourself? I was there the next day. A lot of things happened, but this is 40 years ago. And I decided to... if I go into detail, so many things happened, and there were so many frustrations and, hard moments. But my heart has always been in it, and finally I took over the shop, and I'm now doing my own thing here.
I remember...
In a very short version, huh?
I remember when I was about 14, I saw a demonstration where someone took off the left-hand key work here, and I could not believe it, how many little tiny pieces were all in there. Now, did you study engineering? Did you work with an apprentice? Nothing?
No, it all came from nothing.
Wow.
I started really from scratch at my uncle. And in a way, of course, I missed a lot of... education. On the other hand, I accepted everything my uncle taught me. Mm-hmm. So in that way, I said yes to everything. Mm-hmm. The first 10 years, and then I started to ask questions and to do my own thing and to change specific procedures. I drove my uncle nuts. He really I was always finding another way and doing things differently, and he was really sometimes totally desperate.
Oh.
But finally, I mean, to do things differently in a way resulted into the Kingma system.
Mm-hmm.
So there have always been questions about why things were happening in the mechanism.
Mm-hmm.
The BEM system is still a wonderful invention and a genius system. But I've always been surprised. There are limits. And I mean, when you look at the instrument you've got now, like F sharp, G sharp, the B natural, the D sharp, I mean, they were closed holes before.
Mm-hmm.
And all the composers, of course, wrote for it because, I mean, it has no sense for them to make compositions when the instrument doesn't allow you to do it.
Exactly.
So I always strongly believed in first designing an instrument that allows you to do all these things, and then composers take off.
Wow. Yeah, I think that's something that's so great is the relationship between the composers and the performers, but then you have a new dimension with you of the flute maker themselves actually being able to create the parameters for what we can do. I've always believed with contemporary techniques that we always are able to grow and evolve, and the repertoire of that time period really should show everything we can do. You know, if it's 2016, let's put, you know, as many different types of extended techniques as we can. A piece like the Barrio Sequenza only has a couple. Why was that? Because Gazzalone only knew of a couple things that he could do. Then someone like you comes along and creates an entirely different key system that lets us create multiphonics and all these other things that we just couldn't do before, physically could not do.
Yeah. It was a big challenge from a technical point. I mean, it was it was a genetic problem. Mm-hmm. You needed 16 fingers. Mm-hmm. But I think it was time to come up with a solution. And I have, in a way, always been a bit surprised that the BEM system hardly changed over all those years. Mm-hmm. It has been accepted in the way it was. But I'm still discovering new things. This system, in the way you've got it in your hands, is not the end. I see it as the beginning of something. For me, it feels like I opened a door and came into a room, started dancing, and discovered more doors. And behind all those doors are more rooms. It's like a never-ending thing. I mean, this key on key was the solution to make so many other things work on the bigger instruments. So it's a start.
That's fascinating. You know, it's so good to see that there's people out in the flute world always pushing forward, always thinking ahead to what we can do next. And we really need people like you to help develop new ways of playing the instruments. It's just so important to the survival of the flute. We sometimes like to think, oh, well, we've done everything we can. No, we haven't. We have so much more.
End.
Yeah.
No end. And you know what, Rachel? I can only do these things because I like to work with people. Mm-hmm. I learned a lot from Robert. Mm-hmm. I learned a lot from Matthias, from Wissam, from Jos Zwanenburg, from all these players, and LaBerge. I mean, they are. It would have been impossible without them.
Oh yeah.
And when you've got like a good combination, 1 + 1 is more than 2. Mm-hmm. I really believe in it, and everybody adds something different. And there are some people with really wonderful ideas. Mm-hmm. So it's a collaboration.
That's a really beautiful way to have a career, is to be able to work with so many different ideas. So your first flute was from 1975, I believe. Your first ever Kingma System flute.
No. I started in 1975.
Okay.
And I moved my shop and left my uncle in 89. But shortly before that, this Dutch player, Jos Zwanenburg, came over to our shop from my uncle and me. And he wanted to have an open hole, like simple 5 open hole alto.
Wow.
That's basically where the whole thing started.
So it was the big flutes that actually caused the Kingma flute.
And then slowly, it started on the alto. Then there was this joke between my uncle and me. Okay, if we've got a 5 open hole alto, what do you think about an open hole bass, which is ridiculous? So that's where the whole thing with the key on key started. Like, it was not an overnight thing. This was like weeks and months of trying things out and a lot of experiments. And finally, we got the first prototype, and that was the one I showed to Robert Dick, and that's where we started to work together.
Excellent.
And then slowly, years later, this idea started to cook in my head about seafood. I didn't want to do it myself, so I wanted to stay with the low flutes, but I wanted to find a solution for the system on the sea flutes. And Bigfoot Brennan, by that time, was already a very dear friend. So I decided to, on the 17th birthday of Albert Cooper, we were both together in London, and I asked him on forehand to stay one day extra. That's where we started to talk, and that's where our collaboration started. And that's the system you've got in your hands now.
And that is the system I have. Wow.
System.
So tell me a little bit about, what other ideas do you see the flute moving towards? Are there things like, would you ever consider making like an 8th tone flute or something like that? Is that feasible, or would there be, what other kinds of things?
I never say no.
You never say no?
But I'm a little bit careful because Grollo now seems to be the place for a lot of people in the flute world who think, okay, when we've got a crazy idea, we go to Eva and she's doing it. Mm-hmm. In the beginning, I said yes to everything. I was just naive.
Yeah.
And I paid my price. So I'm more careful, and I'm more, after 40 years, aware of things that are possible and things that are not possible. But there are some things in the pipeline, especially with the big flutes. Mm-hmm. And I did some nice experiments on the Hoover from Matthias that I would like to develop further. It's a little bit too early to talk about it now. But that opened a lot of other possibilities as well, like the key on key. And so I think I need another 5 reincarnations to complete all the things that I've got here.
Oh, yes. Wow. Now, did you read books to learn about flute making? I know that there's a couple different, like, flute acoustic books, like the Benode Flute Acoustics book. And
I have to say, I'm not somebody who looks things up.
Yeah.
I'm just more, like, starting. Mm-hmm. And more in a practical way. Mm-hmm. And I'm not afraid to make mistakes and to see where it leads me to. Mm-hmm. So I'm not a mathematic person. I'm not making drawings before I start something new. I'm just starting, and something always comes out of it.
Oh, yes. Mm-hmm. I think that's such a great, that spirit of creating like that and knowing that it might not work out, but at least that you had the time to try it. I think that's a really excellent way to view your craft. You know, sometimes I'll play a piece of music a certain way and I'll think it's a great idea and it's not a good idea to play it that way, but I would rather have done that than not at all.
Well, that's one of the reasons why I decided to keep my shop small. Mm-hmm. I don't... there were like some, let's say, possibilities to expand it together with some other companies. I decided not to go into it. Mm-hmm. I've got like a great silver and goldsmith here who works like 4 days a week, and he's fantastic. I never had somebody like that.
Excellent.
And is a really wonderful support. But for the rest, if I'm growing, I can't do the things that I'm doing now. I would like to. I'm bad in just making production.
Mm-hmm.
I need time to work on new things, to develop and invent new things. Also to keep the fun.
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm growing, it's not working.
No.
And it's still very important for me to have the face together with the instrument that I'm working on. Most of the time, I met people at conventions, and when they place orders, I mean, sometimes it takes a year before I'm ready to start making the instrument for them. But it's for me a very personal thing. And over the years, I notice more and more that it's important for players.
It is.
That they get this treatment and that they know it's usually I make pictures during a making process and send it so that they can see their baby growing.
Mm-hmm.
And more and more people come over to pick up the instrument so that we can work together for one, especially with the complicated Kingma System flutes. It's almost impossible to have it all perfectly fit.
Oh, no, yeah.
It's like fractions of millimeters, and I would love to have the hands with it.
Mm-hmm.
So that usually works wonderful.
That's excellent. I'll tell you what, with what you have with like I guess you could call it the standard Kingma. Now you have a patent on your system, correct? So you give your patents to other makers. So when Lev Levitt made my flute, he had a it was pretty self-explanatory. I'm sure the actual casting of the key work and all of that is pretty difficult. But when you actually look at this kind of construction, you see that you just have the vents and it's smack in the middle of the key. Now, had anyone thought to do that before you? No one? Really?
No, otherwise I wouldn't not have gotten a patent.
True.
Because when you apply for a patent, which is a nightmare, I will never do it again.
Oh.
But it led into a license agreement with Brennan, and later on with Sankyo, and now with Lev. But it's so much time and money and paperwork, and they do a whole research in libraries if it already existed. Mm-hmm. So, and they try to how do you call it, deny it.
Oh.
So they try everything to just avoid giving you a patent.
Oh, no. Mm-hmm.
But they did a lot of research and Robert Dick was very helpful because he really sent letters in and helped me with it. No, if this would have been there, no patent.
Wow, that's excellent.
For now, if I'm coming out with new things, I will simply make it and no nonsense.
Yeah, no nonsense.
No.
Wow, so do you do all of your own, so you make all of your own flutes, correct, when out of your shop?
Yes.
Okay.
And together with the guy here.
Okay.
Who works here.
Okay, cool.
And it came out of control. We've got so many instruments now. There are like 9 different models. Mm-hmm. And most of the models do have different designs.
They do.
You've got like the small bore, closed hole. You've got a bass flute, 5 open hole bass flute, full Kingma System bass flute. This model also exists in the upright model. Then you've got the large bore bass, upright large bore, all the options. Contralto, available with full Kingma System. The closed and open hole alto. Now this Kingma System alto, the contrabasses, sub-contrabasses.
Wow.
I'm even working on a larger version on the background.
Wow.
That's a lot of work.
Oh, yes.
But we will get there.
You will get there. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And every day I look forward to going to my shop.
Aww. That's excellent. Is there anything else you would like to tell us about maybe flute making or anything that you think is important for people to know about your flutes?
just hope with this interview
Mm-hmm.
that people will be more open for the system and to just give it a try.
Yes.
Every year at the National Flute Association and at the convention, and there is always a Brennan Kingma system, which is a beautiful instrument, and the Levitt flute and the Sakyo Kingma system, they're all a little bit different, but the system is the same concept. And people will find out that it will make their life so much easier.
Agreed.
You know, as you know, the contemporary field is just part of it.
Oh, yes.
It's an instrument on itself.
Oh,
But
yeah.
what we all know is that's also with violin making. It's all very traditional. So people would like to hang on things that they know and they are used to. And I've been thinking for many years that Brennan and I probably offered too many different options at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe one option every year so that people could get used to it. But we offered like 6 new options.
Wow.
Which sometimes is quite overwhelming for people. But the people, that's the experience, the people that play a Kingma system cannot be without anymore.
No, it's really very easy for me to have picked up just using the extra keys. When I have a quarter D sharp key and you just slide your pinky over and that option is suddenly there, and if I play a flute that doesn't have Kingma System, it doesn't feel as perhaps engaging or as interactive as this flute does, just because I have all of this available and it just feels very natural.
Yeah, but you're open for it.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah? And so there are other people open for it, but they have to just... I hope it will make more people curious.
Absolutely.
And I think it's a wonderful idea that you're doing this. And I also hope you will do something with Wissam and with Matthias.
Oh, absolutely.
They will be... They will give you some because I'm a maker and a designer. I'm not so much a player. So it's really important in your project to have like feedback from players who've got these instruments for many years.
Absolutely.
Also, Robert.
Yeah. And I think it's great because everybody you've mentioned, this is something I touched on with Carla a little bit, everybody uses the Kingma flute differently.
Yes.
And with different permutations of what it is. So they have the extra keys. What do they choose to do with it? With Carla, she's doing lots of written work. But if you're Robert Dick, you're doing a lot of improvisation and a very multiphonic, heavy type of performance. So it's great to see, and I'm sure Wissam and Matthias, they have their own feelings about it.
But also Carla. I mean, Carla is so important in terms of working with composers and active and she is a wonderful player, and I'm amazed. I mean, she picked up the new full Kingma System bass flute upright, which is not an easy instrument. I think half an hour later she played like almost everything on it.
Wow.
I just couldn't. I recorded it. I just couldn't believe it, like Bach sonatas, as if it was like a normal flute.
Wow.
Yeah, with all the keys on it. So, yeah, I've got a lot of respect for all the people that we were talking about.
Those are all great people, I think, for anybody tuning in to listen to. I mean, they have websites, they have recordings, they have all of these resources that let you hear perhaps some of the different multiphonics, whether it be that themselves or even just the microtones. And I mean, to play an acoustically accurate microtone, you don't have to change the coloring. You finally don't have to change the tone coloring to play some of these notes. If I want to play an F sharp 3/4 sharp, I can do that. And
it has
change.
the same value now.
Yes, has the same value.
It was possible with a lot of improvised fingerings and your embouchure, of course, but it always sounded different.
Yes.
And now you've got exactly the same value. Sometimes, when I listen to like the Indian players, doing so many amazing things on the simple instruments, no keywork at
Yeah.
all. I sometimes feel a little bit ashamed with all the keys that I added. But it's a big challenge, and I look forward to see what it brings the players and the composers in the future.
Yes, excellent.
And again, there will be more changes in the coming time. But for now, the Kingma system, there are still one or two things that I would like to further develop. But for now, I think it's fine.
Well, we will be looking forward to finding out whatever those are in the next couple of years, I'm sure,
I keep you informed.
Oh, please do. Well, thank you so much for your time. Before you go, is there anything else you'd like to say?
Well, again, I think it's a wonderful idea to do this.
Oh, excellent.
If people do have questions, they are always welcome to visit my website or to contact me, and I will be happy to help them out.
Absolutely, and that's so important that you're willing to be able to do that, to get the word out about what you do. Yes.
Of course. It has to go into the world. Huh?
Yeah.
It's a tool.
Excellent. Well, I'm going to turn off the recorder. I would like to thank
Rachel,
you again.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
And we will be in touch again.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.